Hello, and welcome to Benny's Alternate Universe, a show where we explore what's going on in my world and my tape collection. And what I happen to be listening to at the moment is the 1979 cassette from the Cars, Candy-O. The Cars are a Boston-based band built around songwriter Rick Ocasek. They had a great guitarist in Elliot Easton, and Greg Hawkes on keyboard was a real innovator. And the sound that the Cars were bringing to the table in 1978 with their debut, which I have over here, the Cars, classic, one of the greatest debut records ever. And if we just briefly look at the track list, you're going to see Let the Good Times Roll, My Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed are the first three tracks, all big hits. You're All I've Got Tonight and Bye Bye Love on side 2 were also hits. This was a huge record, produced by Roy Thomas Baker of Queen fame. And the thing about the Cars' debut album that to me makes it very significant, although I don't know that the Cars have ever really gotten their due as far as being influential, is that this was 1978 that they were ushering in synth rock. The synth was fully incorporated in the sound, and of course this would influence a lot of bands throughout the 80s. 1978 again was the year on that. So this was before bands like Duran Duran. This is before Van Halen was experimenting with synths on 1984 and synth pop, as it were. Before Prince did 1999. These guys were really ahead of the curve and real innovators with their sound. And aside from writing hit songs, they were known and being synth innovators. They had a very, very crisp sound. Their arrangements were really intricate, yet simple in the songwriting. The songwriting was basic and kind of pop-based, but the arrangement of the instrumentation was always really sophisticated. And I love that about the Cars because they just create a really satisfying sound. It's not particularly heavy or anything like that. It's just always got a nice, crisp sound. So anyway, not to get too deep into that, they followed up their 1978 debut album with Candy-O in 1979. This came out June 13th, 1979, 1 month and 1 day before I was born. So I love this album also because I always remember seeing it at my mom's house. She was a big fan of the cover by Alberto Vargas, which is one of the all-time classic album covers, and I'm really glad to have this kind of very good plus LP just so I can display that. And I also am such a big fan that I have my own version there that I can carry around with me, courtesy of my buddy Mikey Har at New London Inc. It's kind of hard to see, but you know, you get the idea. It's Candy-O. So a lot of artists, when they get to their second album, of course, we know about the dreaded sophomore slump, which is a situation that occurs when a band is together for a while composing songs as a new band. They get their first album, they put all the best songs on the first album, and there's nothing left for the second album. This was not the case for Candy-O. As a matter of fact, Rick Ocasek wrote all these songs specifically for the second album, and there's only one tune, which is Night Spots, that was a holdover from before the first album was released. So they teamed up with Roy Thomas Baker again, and they came up with an album that, in my opinion, is equally as good as the first album. In some ways better, in some ways worse, but the sound on Candy-O is super fantastic. Probably the best sounding Cars record, which is saying something because Cars always sound great on record. Greg Hawk's synth tones on this record are really cool. They're 80s, but to me, the Cars have aged very well. They still have a sound that's, if not current, it sounds really cool, almost futuristic. I know it's weird to say that a record that came out in 1979 sounds futuristic 40 years later, but that's really still the vibe I get off Candio, especially certain tracks like the title track, which has a kind of preamble called Shooby Doo. A lot of people don't have love for this track, but I don't see it as a song. It's just an intro that leads up into very sleek and kind of heavy Candio. Just the guitar tones are like glass. I love Elliot Easton's guitar tones on all their records, but this one in particular, when he goes for a heavy, quote, heavy tone, it's just very icy cool, almost like robotic. The tones are so great between him and Greg Hawkes. You could hear more of that futuristic kind of sound on definitely Night Spots, Got a Lot on My Head, Dangerous Type, and all over the record there's that unique fusion of guitars and synths in a real rock pop format. They weren't so much interested with dance music, disco, anything like that. So the album starts off with one of the greatest Cars tracks, one of their greatest singles and enduring singles, Let's Go. Everybody knows I like the nightlife, baby. And what this song does is two things. First of all, it's a fantastic song on its own right. Definitely a classic of what I would consider 80s music, even though it preceded the 80s. But it also sets up a lyrical theme that's going to continue throughout the whole record and really throughout the whole Cars discography, which is these women who are, you know, they're like sometimes femme fatales, sometimes they're just unattainable for other reasons. But there's always a lot of excitement surrounding these women in the Cars songs that are like mysterious, and the girl who's the protagonist of Let's Go, or I guess the object of Let's Go, is just kind of always in motion, always captivating, you know. She's got wonderful eyes and a risque mouth and so forth. And it's a great song, it's a classic. Since I Held You is almost... it's on the slower mid-tempo side. I wouldn't say it's a slow song per se. Excellent song. It's All I Can Do. All I Can Do is one of the weaker tracks on the album. Having said that, or for me, it's a really good track. It's great synth work. All the songs on this album, with the exception of Shooby Doo, which I think is just an interlude, all have great hooks. Double Life, Shooby Doo, Candio. Night Spots is a little more dangerous on the dark side of the Cars, which they bring out this vibe. It's like a nocturnal vibe. It's very sophisticated, sleek, and romantic. Maybe this is why I chose to do this one around Valentine's Day, I don't know. I've actually been listening to this for a couple weeks now, trying to get my thoughts straight on this record and what makes it so good. The sequencing is great. Definitely is a good album to play over and over again. Between the opener of Let's Go, the side one closer of Candio is an excellent track, one of my favorite Cars tracks. And then the side two closer, Dangerous Type, is really great. And if you haven't heard this and you only know Cars as a singles band and as a radio band, this is definitely a highlight of the record. It's hard to pick a favorite. I mean, I guess I would have to say Let's Go. It's just such a great song, but Dangerous Type is up there. It's a competitor. So this record was again produced by Roy Thomas Baker of Queen. did really well on the charts, as you would expect, and it kind of set Cars up as being one of the most important premier bands of the 80s, with the style that they innovated. They weren't the first to combine synths and guitars, so please don't open up a hornet's nest of hate on me, but they were one of the first to have really huge success on the radio with it and in record sales with it. And I think Candy-O is a tape and a record that you see a lot in secondhand. Not so much on CD because it was from before that time, although of course it was out on CD. I mean, that album has never gone out of print that I'm aware of. But if you see it in your secondhand digging around, you see this cover, okay, what are you paying, 50 cents for tapes, $1? That's worth the price of admission. Let's Go is worth a high five anyway, because that song is great to have anytime you need. Of course, they put it track 1 because cars are no dummies. Rewind directly to Let's Go and leave the tape on. Flip it over and play it again and again and again. The more you listen to it, the better it gets, which is rare. Get the first Cars album if possible. After that, it's kind of hit or miss. Shake It Up, Heartbeat City. If their first album wasn't their peak, Candy-O was. And this is a fantastic album from the Cars. I'm going to run and grab my ducks really quick because I forgot to bring them in. And I didn't even duck rate this one yet. I hope everybody can hear me. But I got my ducks. Okay, the reason why we're out here, by the way, is because my main stereo, my pink stereo that you may have seen in a couple videos, I blew the speaker listening to High on Fire. And so I'm using the good stereo now. Get a shot of this. This is absolutely fantastic. Big console stereo. 2